Undroppables Playbook, a football podcast. With your hosts, Ashley and Mike, please sit back and enjoy the show.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Undroppables Playbook, a football podcast presented by the Undroppables and sponsored by Analyst Depot. I'm your host, Ashley. This is my lovely co-host, Michael Duncan. How are you?
I'm doing wonderfully.
Yeah, hold on, I'm going to switch my mic.
Okay.
There we go. Sorry, I could tell something was off. My mic is off. But yeah, what a fun Super Bowl. I mean, nothing crazy, but good Super Bowl nonetheless.
I thought it was fine at best.
Yeah, I think it was good. Like it wasn't horrible, it wasn't great, but it wasn't that one Patriots-Rams game, so I can call anything good at this point after having to watch that Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, I think more than anything it was a letdown because of how good of football we've had most of this postseason. Yes. But like, I don't know. I think it came down to the wire, and that's kind of fun. But like the way it came down to the wire sucked. And it just wasn't. I don't know. I don't personally think it was that great of a game.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a step above that Rams Patriots game, but I think it's still a step below what most of the Super Bowls have been in the past 10, 15 years.
Yeah, and I also think another part of that is that not only did it come down to the final wire, it came down to like a fourth down conversion, and it was kind of like a letdown how the game ended, right? Like you didn't end on this. It was just like a weird play, like it wasn't anything spectacular. So I think that was a little bit that kind of, dulled your enthusiasm because all of a sudden it was over,
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get into it too much because I have a lot of thoughts on the end of the game, and I know we're going to talk about that after we kind of get through other stuff. But yeah, I'll save that for later. I think it's probably best if we start by talking about the news and getting all that fun stuff out of the way, I guess.
Lead us so fun. Lead us off.
Well, okay, so I'm going to go out of order of what we have on the list. But before we get to the quarterbacks, Kevin O'Connell, the Rams offensive coordinator, he has a parade today, Wednesday. And tomorrow he will officially be named the head coach of the Vikings, or at least he'll be introduced as such for the first time. I forget if we said this last week, but Dennis Allen, the former defensive coordinator of the Saints, has been named the head coach of the Saints. I feel like we didn't mention that, or it hadn't happened yet.
I didn't even know that.
Oh, yeah, no, that's a thing that happened. It happened very silently, sort of.
Good.
But yeah, so Sean Payton's former defensive coordinator is now the head coach of the Saints. Very boring, very, inside hire, whatever. Not too exciting. Something a tad more interesting is a report that has come out from multiple places that Carson Wentz is likely to be cut or traded by the start of the new league year, which I want to say is like March 13th, I think, March 11th, one of those. It started by a report or I forget who it was, but talking on ESPN and saying, his future in Indianapolis looked bleak. And it was kind of, we kind of felt that way at the end of the season when Colts management was very non-committal to his future with the team. It didn't, they weren't really kind of supportive in any way. They didn't do the easy thing and just say, yeah, we're great. He's great. I really think that, he's going to get better next year and that kind of stuff. Like it was just very bleak from that point. And now we're hearing that they're going to cut or trade him before a large sum of money on his contract is guaranteed at the start of the new league year. So yeah, that's a turn of events.
Yeah, especially very weird. And I think, so we knew some heads were going to roll after, the owners put out that statement. Yeah, not even that, but then the owners put out that statement that was like, and it like wasn't, you get a lot of these like fake apologies from owners and stuff, but that seemed a little bit more serious than the stuff we've heard from owners and coaches and top execs in the past. It seemed like they were adamant about it. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him gone.
Yeah, I mean,
hey, you Eagles got your draft pick, right?
Yeah, we got a first round pick.
Compensatory pick.
Yeah, I mean, I was a huge Carson Wentz fan when he was in Philadelphia. I've, since come around to the fact that I guess I was wrong on all that. I think a big part of this, and something that's going to be a very large topic of conversation if and when he gets cut and if and when he goes to a new team, possibly as a starting quarterback, maybe not, is, it happened a decent bit this year, but his refusal to get vaccinated. He got it. He didn't end up missing any games, which, awesome, because it happened just as the league changed their policy. But he was openly not vaccinated. And I think there's a really decent chance that greatly impacted his performance in the last 2 weeks, where, he had been pretty solid all year. It was not his 2017 MVP year, but much more like his 2019 year, where they finished strong, went to the playoffs. But the end of that season was just bad, really, really bad. He didn't look right, and he just wasn't making good decisions on the field. So I think it's going to be a really interesting topic of conversation in the offseason. And, I think he's going to be looked at as a guy who is going to go to the places that lose out on the Aaron Rodgers, the Russell Wilson, maybe even some of the guys in the draft. I don't think he's going to want to go somewhere that is already drafting a top quarterback in the draft, but he might not have a choice. So,
yeah, I don't think he's done yet. Like, I don't know that he has the liberty to be like, I don't want to go there. You know what I mean? Because if I feel like he doesn't want to be done, so you kind of have to go where you're welcomed. Like,
if he's not humbled already, I don't know what's the problem. I mean, I was a massive Carson Wentz fan. I've done a lot of soul searching, I think, this season in terms of my fandom for him. But, the way that he approached getting benched in Philly, I think is very impactful on his future in the NFL. And, he came out and said it. There's, I believe, even mic'd up stuff of it on the sideline. But like when he was benched in that, I believe it was the Packers game that year, he basically came out and said, he's like, I got to get out of here. He never owned up to the fact that he should have been benched because he was playing like crap. But he never owned up to it. He blamed others. He didn't take, any blame for himself. And it was very like, I shouldn't have been benched. And that means I need to leave. Whereas, in my opinion, if you're really a franchise quarterback and you're that type of guy, we've seen it before, like, use that as motivation. Yep. He instead took his ball and went home. And I just, that's not the kind of attitude that I think franchises are looking for in a soon-to-be 30-year-old quarterback who's probably going to cost a decent amount of money and had one really, really awesome season and hasn't done too much since.
Yeah.
So,
average at best.
I don't know. It's a very interesting conversation, and it's not something I would have expected to be talking about 2 years ago. So
yeah, I'd say that again. Some other news. Let's see, what do we have here? Oh, the news about Kyler Murray. That stuff is crazy. So Kyler Murray deleted his Instagram and unfollowed, most of his Instagram posts, unfollowed the Cardinals. Then the Cardinals deleted all of their Instagram posts except for 2, the same way Kyler did.
They did it. The only 2 they didn't delete were of Kyler.
Of Kyler, yes.
Yeah. So they were kind of, shout out to whoever owns that account, because that was fun.
Really, right? I always think about that, like the interns that 20-year-olds that run these accounts. I love them because they're awesome at it. But then news came out that, something about Kyler Murray is not happy with the way the season ended. He says he feels like he was set up for an embarrassment and set up for failure in that game against the Rams. He feels like they're not, helping him in his success, that he's kind of carrying it all on his own, blah, blah, blah. So there's a lot of reports of what could happen now. Personally, I think he just stays in Arizona. But what are your opinions on the matter?
I think it's very bizarre more than
anything.
It's just, it's not as if he did anything crazy well, really, in the second half of the season as a whole.
Yeah.
He didn't perform particularly well, but he had excuses for that. Absolutely, he had excuses for that. But the thing that really gets me, and the thing that really confuses me, is his statement that he put out a couple days after all this happened. And I'm going to read it word for word. So he said, "I play this game for the love of it, my teammates, everyone who has helped me get to this position and believed in me to win championships." All of this nonsense is not what I'm about, never has been, never will be. Anyone who has ever stepped between those lines with me knows how hard I go. Love me or hate me, but I'm going to continue to grow and get better. Sure, awesome statement. Why did he say that this nonsense is not what he's about? He's the one that's
like
doing
starting the
this.
nonsense.
Like, that's the thing that confuses me, is he went out of his way to do this crap. This is like, nobody forced him to do this. Nobody, like, if you feel like you're in this weird position or you were set up to fail or whatever, like, if you're really not about that nonsense, like, you don't have to do this. You don't have to delete everything. Like, we live in 2022. You know what your actions are going to do because we've seen it, and you have like 1 billion followers. They are going to notice if you unfollow the Cardinals because that's what the internet does. Like, you can't say you're all about this nonsense after you've done all that crap. Nobody asked you to. Nobody forced you to. Nobody was even talking about you before you did that. You brought up the conversation. It's very confusing. It made no sense to me whatsoever. I just, like, I don't know. Like, at least when wide receivers seem to do it, like Stephon Diggs, like, they have the gall to just not talk about it. They'll just post cryptic tweets. Fine, whatever. Never address it. I like it better that way. Kyler Murray does all the weird stuff and then is like, nah, that ain't me. Well, who the hell is it? Who has control of all of your accounts? Because if it's not you, tell someone.
That would be a concern.
Yeah.
You should get that fixed.
I don't know. Very odd.
It is very weird.
I don't know what to think of it.
All the beat reporters are saying that really nothing's going to come of it. The organization's kind of saying nothing's going to come of it, but it's still just plain weird.
Yeah, absolutely.
You said bizarre. I think that's the best word for it.
Yep. It's just like, again, it's something that didn't need to happen.
Mm-hmm.
It came out of nowhere, and nothing about it has made sense since it happened.
Yep.
Which is just, I don't know. Very odd. We can move on.
Very odd. All right. So we got 2 things that have to do with lawsuits. The first of all is that it came out this week that the Cowboys paid $2.4 million in a settlement to cheerleaders who claimed voyeurism claims. I haven't read too much about it.
I had to Google what voyeurism was, so.
Tell the people. I do know what voyeurism
all right.
is.
It is, the dictionary definition is the practice of gaining sexual pleasure from watching others when they are naked or engaged in sexual activity.
Yeah, so it could be that, they put a camera in a dressing room, the cheerleaders' dressing room or in their locker room or something like that, and kind of just spied on them and used that footage, whatever you want to think of how they used that footage. But each of the women received about just under $400,000. This says one of it is that she saw Richard Dalrymple, the Cowboys' longtime senior vice president for public relations and communications, standing behind a partial wall in their locker room with his iPhone extended towards them while they were changing their clothes. Several people knew about the events later sent by attorneys for cheerleaders for the team, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, he gained entrance through the back door, so they were being filmed and spied on in their locker rooms while changing.
Cowboys suck.
They do, in fact. And then the other lawsuit-related news is that the NFL hired former U.S. Attorney General Loretta Lynch for the defense in the Brian Flores lawsuit.
Interesting.
Very interesting.
That'll probably see a lot of developments this offseason.
She's a very powerful woman. Love her. But, all right, tell us the next one.
So this will actually, I'm going to skip this one. We can talk about it when we get on to the Super Bowl. But first, Dante Fowler was released from the Falcons. I think that just happened. Obviously, we record this Wednesday nights. I believe it just happened. So interesting. Former first round pick, I think, or was he like an early second? I forget. I always confused him with someone else. But and that last piece of news. Yeah.
Hold on. I also had one more thing. I'm going to pull it up right now. That there is talk about the NFL Combine. I don't know if you saw this, but Athletes First, which is a firm that represents 23 players that are invited to next month's Combine in Indianapolis, released a statement today saying that, they have a lot of concerns about how they're running the combine this year, saying that there were a lot of proposed changes that are going to jeopardize a lot of athletes' health. They said the NFL has been floating around an idea of a bubble, which would prohibit them from working with their trainers and therapists. And that the NFL modified players' schedules to hold the bench press and on-field workouts in the same day, which is different from every other year and is also could be a detriment to their health and their success in the NFL. I mean, if you're not equipped and you haven't been training like that, your numbers are going to go down.
Yeah, it's just going to inspire top picks to not do things. And then it's really only going to end up affecting the people that are on the bubble of being drafted anyway. So.
Yep. And then that's it. You said we'll talk about the next one during our little breakdown that we have going.
Yeah. So next, obviously, a game happened this weekend.
No, really?
Last weekend. Yep. The Super Bowl. The Rams walked away victorious, beating the Cincinnati Bengals. I believe that was the Rams' second franchise Super Bowl, and the first Super Bowl victory by a team in LA at the time. So, and it also happened in LA.
It did.
So you have some interesting viewership numbers here that I'm assuming you want to talk about.
Yes, I do. The viewership numbers came out. I honestly, you can kind of get the idea of what they mean, but I don't know why all of the second numbers are different. Do you know that? Is it per person?
Oh, I assumed that you knew.
I honestly forgot to look that up. But Cincinnati, we could still go through it anyway. Cincinnati ranked first with a 46.1 out of 84. Detroit came in second with a 45.9 out of 79. Then Pittsburgh, Columbus, Kansas City, Milwaukee, Cleveland, Boston, Philly, Jacksonville, and LA was way, way, way down with a 36.7 out of 77 viewership number.
Shocker.
Wow, who would have thought?
They also
most of their fans are celebrities that can get tickets to the game. So
I don't know.
Detroit is a cool one that's up there. Eminem was the halftime show, and Eminem is from Detroit. He's very outspoken about that, but also because Matt Stafford was formerly played for the Lions, and I guess they were cheering him on. Probably, maybe, I don't know.
I mean, I think I'm going to be quite honest with you. I think it has very little to do with Eminem. I think it has very much. To do
I think
with
half
Stafford.
of it was Eminem. I'm just kidding.
You've mentioned it every time we've talkked about this, and I can't tell.
We've talked about it literally once before the game.
Well, yeah, that's every time we've talked about it.
Once before here, and then others. I mentioned it. Of course I did.
That's but you. I can't tell if you actually think that that's a large majority of.
No, I do not think it's a large majority.
Just making sure.
90%, 99% of it is probably from. Cheering on Matt Stafford.
I just want to make sure.
Sure, there are a few people.
I want to make sure that you're getting your opinion off correctly.
That is my opinion.
Well, there you go. Okay, so yeah, I agree with you. LA apparently what?
I said, wow, thanks.
You're welcome. That's why I'm here.
Doesn't happen often.
Yeah, LA kind of sucks.
They do.
Why do they have two teams? It didn't make sense to me in the first place.
Yeah. Remember when they were somewhere else?
You mean St. Louis?
Yeah, I was going to say a different, I don't remember what I was going to say, but it definitely wasn't that. I couldn't remember it, but.
I'm glad you didn't.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah,
You're embarrassing me.
What?
You're just embarrassing me.
You're doing it yourself.
I just said that.
I'm doing nothing. I don't know. It was the Super Bowl pictures from today. Obviously, the internet was kind of getting a laugh out of it. I'm sure they're only sorry, not the Super Bowl, the parade pictures from today. The internet's kind of getting a laugh out of it. I'm sure that only kind of shows a portion of reality when it comes to the amount of people that actually went to the parade. But I don't know. I'll never understand. I didn't back in 2017, 2018 when they went to LA, people talking about how this is an incredible football town. It needs two teams. It's no, it doesn't. It really never has been. There's a reason they left. They can't support, they can barely support one team. Yeah. I mean, there's a reason that they have two of the better teams. They have two of the more entertaining teams in the entire NFL, and their fan bases are just non-existent, at least locally. Their local fan bases are fairly non-existent. Yes, there are hardcore fans. Don't come at me. They exist. I guarantee it. But it is
they
not
just can't afford to live
majority.
in LA.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like Cincinnati. It's just No one would really choose to live in Cincinnati over LA. Okay, some people would, but like not many. But the fans aren't even close. Detroit, Pittsburgh, really all these places, weirdly enough, even that have none going for them in this particular game. But
yeah. And
I
I literally said when the game ended, I said, that's going to be a boring parade. Like, not even, like, it's just like, I know it's in like LA and it's going to be like sunny or whatever, but like, that's a boring
sunny
parade.
or whatever.
And literally said that it was going to be a boring parade.
Yeah.
Called that one.
Yeah. I mean, it was. I don't want to just make fun of LA for the next 20 minutes because I very much could.
Okay. Well, we can jump into into the box score a little bit, and then we'll kind of talk about some of those numbers. So, let's start with the Rams. Matthew Stafford was 26 for 40 with 283 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. And Cooper Kupp threw 1 pass, which did not complete it.
Nowhere.
Yeah.
Trying to do the Philly special. Guess what? It don't work.
Was Joe Mixon's one like the actual like playbook Philly special? Or
no?
Okay,
it was the Rams one that was.
Yeah, that went like over Stafford's head.
Yeah, that was more actually the Philly special. The Joe Mixon one, I believe Joe Mixon threw it to T. Higgins. So
yeah, he did for a touchdown. But so Cam Akers had 13 carries for a total of 21 yards. That's the most of all of their running backs. We go on to Cooper Kupp, who had 8 receptions, 92 yards, and 2 touchdowns. OBJ, before getting hurt, had 2 receptions for 52 yards and 1 touchdown. Those are pretty much the big numbers. Van Jefferson did okay. Yeah. And then we could talk about the Bengals a little bit. Joe Burrow was 22 for 33 with 263 yards and 1 touchdown. And Joe Mixon was 1 for 1 for 6 yards and 1 touchdown. But Joe Mixon did have 15 carries for 72 rushing yards. And then their receivers, T. Higgins was 4 for 100 with 2 touchdowns. Jamar Chase was 5 for 89. Boyd was 5 for 48. And Uzama was 2 for 11. Those are the big numbers. Lots of numbers. I know I spewed them all at once, but I know the stuff we want to talk about kind of is based a lot on that box score and those numbers. So why don't you get started telling us a little bit about this Rams run game? Because those numbers speak for themselves. I mean, 21 yards being the most carries that a running back had on that team is kind of crazy.
Yeah, I mean, the Bengals defense played really well for the most part. I mean, I think they only had 2 sacks on the day, but they made it very clear very early on in the game that they weren't gonna lose the game by getting outrun, you know? Like they weren't giving up yards on the ground. I mean, I'm pretty sure the longest rush they gave up was to Cooper Kupp for 7 yards. And that was a wide receiver on like an end around or whatever. So that happens. But to running backs in the rushing game, they weren't giving it up. And I'm really trying to hold back and like wait until we get to like broader conversation. Yes. But like Sean McVay coached a terrible game. He did not coach a good game. Neither did Zach Taylor. Yeah. And Sean McVay's insistence of like continuing to run the ball when it wasn't working, when the offense was doing nothing. I mean, that's half the reason that they were, losing, or it was a very close game for the majority of the game. Cam Akers, it's going to be interesting what he looks like after an offseason of resting and healing and getting stronger. He did not look particularly good. I don't know if that's necessarily on him so much as it is just the Bengals defense looked really good against the run. It's not like Darrell Henderson or Sony Michel really, looked good either.
I do think it's part of it him. I mean, the first, 1 game back was good, like showed a lot of burst, a lot of speed. But ever since he, I mean, rightfully so, hasn't looked the same and doesn't look like he's totally back to 100%. Again, totally understandable after coming back this fast from an Achilles tear. But I don't know. I think you can place a handful of the blame on coaching and matchup, but I do think part of it is just that he hasn't rehabbed enough to get back to that level he was at before. Yeah. I mean, yeah, but also the Rams are the only team to ever win the Super Bowl while averaging less than 2 yards per carry.
Yeah, I mean, I'm I don't know. This is kind of why I was saying it was like I didn't really feel like a good game. I mean, they're two very flawed teams, and we knew that going in. Obviously the um the Bengals are a young team. No one was really expecting them to be here. Their offensive line has clearly been an issue for the majority of the season. And against a better pass rush, it was really shown up. Another stat we have here is that the Rams have the highest pass rush win rate of any team this season at 86%. And the Bengals was only 18%, which was the worst of any team this year, which really shows, like, again, they weren't getting anywhere when they were rushing the passer on defense. You're still muted. I can't hear you.
Sorry, I was just saying that pass rush win rate's actual definition is how often a pass rusher is able to beat his block within 2.5 seconds. For this right now.
Yeah. So again, obviously, like, it's not like you have those stats on hand during the game. But Sean McVay he wasn't able to evaluate what was going well and what wasn't going well and properly adjust at halftime or during the game and adjust the play calling accordingly to. It shouldn't have come down to that, like, far into the game for the Rams to be able to win. Like Sean McVay, I think there would be very serious conversation right now if Cooper Kupp didn't bail him out about how good of a coach Sean McVay actually is. And I think what it really came down to is Cooper Kupp bailed him out. Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford, to a certain extent, really bailed him out. Matthew Stafford made two not great passes for interceptions, and it really came down to kind of what we talked about last week. Like, the reason that the Bengals were winning this game up until that final drive by the Rams was because the Rams allowed them to do that. The Rams were the better team. They had a better roster, a very talented roster, and Matthew Stafford kept the Bengals in the game basically single-handedly. Sean McVay helped them by rushing the ball with Cam Akers when it wasn't working. Cooper Kupp got like half of his targets on that final drive, meaning that before that final drive, he had at most 3 or 4 targets on the whole game. That's poor coaching. That's poor game planning.
Yeah.
And that's just, I don't know. I don't believe that Sean McVay deserves basically any praise for what he did in this game. And I think it's basically the same of the guy who just got a contract extension through 2026, Zach Taylor, the head coach of the Bengals, which was the other piece of news that I didn't want to talk about then. But this was not a good coaching matchup. Like, this was not a chess match. This was good players doing their best in okay circumstances. Like, Jamar Chase made an incredible catch that was awesome and probably one of the best ones I've seen all year after beating Jalen Ramsey, who's one of the better cornerbacks in the NFL. Joe Burrow got wrecked. I mean, they tied the Super Bowl record in sacks at 7. Aaron Donald and Von Miller were in his face all day. And Joe Burrow actually played fairly well, considering that. He didn't really make any mistakes in terms of turnovers. That was the Bengals' recipe for winning the game, was don't make mistakes and force Matthew Stafford, or just let Matthew Stafford make mistakes. Because Sean McVay is not an aggressive enough coach to put them in a position to win. There were multiple 4th down calls near the middle of the field where he chose to not be aggressive. And that was the reason that the Bengals were able to stay in the game. And it's one thing I will never understand. I will never understand why Sean McVay cannot get it through his head that he has a great offense, or at least a good offense, supposedly, at least a talented offense. And he's constantly like, yeah, no, I'm good. It's fine.
Yeah.
And I know that they lost to the Bengals, but if the Chiefs were playing the Rams, they would have destroyed them. I don't think it would have been particularly close because Andy Reid is not going to be afraid to put up 50 points. Sean McVay feels like he fears for his life of having to put up more than 20 points in a game.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about something. So I just sent you a picture. I don't know if you'd be able to pull it up on screen. I know your messages weren't working on your computer recently, but so at my house, we played this game of, it was a $20 buy-in. We had a big poster board where we had 27 prop bets, and you had to guess over or under or yes or no on the prop bets. And whoever got the most right won. That's our poster for everyone watching on the video feed. But one of the questions is which team will have more punts, and most people said Bengals. We didn't highlight that one because both teams had 6, so it was a push. No team punted more than the other. But I did pick the Rams for that reason, because I was like, I know Zach Taylor will make a little bit more of those hard calls on 4th down than the Rams would.
Wow,
Isn't that so fun?
It's mesmerizing to look at. There's so much
Right?
information that I can't even.
Yeah, isn't it so fun? We had I could pull some fun ones. We
Did
had
you
the
win?
coin toss. I did not win. I was 1 point away from winning, which is sad.
So
But
you lost.
I did lose. I said that. We had 2 winners who split the pot. And there was so much debate on will there be a missed extra point or field goal with that kick that kind of slipped out that they tried to pass. So that was a debate. The house was screaming about that for hours. But yeah, a lot of pretty much a prop bet for every running back, every receiver, both quarterbacks. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I think that was one of my favorite things we've done on the Super Bowl.
I like that kind of stuff. I did.
Yeah.
I did like a Google thing with a bunch of friends from college. I did not win. I honestly don't even know how close I was, but I wasn't top 3.
This was just fun because it like kept the house together and like super engaged. That it would be like, that's his over, go highlight it, you know, and I would be able to go highlight the over. It kept everyone engaged. Everyone kept walking over to the board. We had it pinned to like an easel, and everyone kept walking over to the board and pointing things out. And I was in charge of it, so it was fun that I got to do it. It was a really good time.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of interesting prop bets in this game. But yeah, I mean, going back to kind of, why I pulled it up. It's just, I don't know.
Punts and McVay not being.
He's a coward. He's a coward. He didn't deserve to win. Yeah. He won because Zach Taylor is a worse coach than he is. But that's not at all a good thing. Like, a lot of times in Super Bowls, you see chess matches. You see a guy out coaching the other guy. Like, I don't really think Sean McVay out coached Zach Taylor. I think Zach Taylor out coached Zach Taylor, and Sean McVay happened to be in the building. Going back and looking at that box score, something that sticks out to me, which I didn't even realize was the case, was that Samaje Perine had 2 carries for 0 yards. Do you want to know when one of those carries was? It was on 3rd and 1 on the final drive of the game for the Bengals. The last-ditch effort to win. And Zach Taylor says, yeah, Joe Mixon is averaging 4.8 yards per carry. Yeah, we pay him a lot of money to run the football and be good at that. And he was a Pro Bowler and, good at football. No, I'm going to give it to Samaje Perine, who at that point had 1 carry in the game. Like, not even from a fantasy perspective, just from like a football perspective. Why are you a moron, Zach Taylor? Why are you an idiot? Everyone that has watched a game of Bengals football this season knows the person that they want getting that handoff. And it is not Samaje Perine. Or you are lying to yourself, or you are Samaje Perine's parents. I don't think Samaje Perine would have picked himself to have that carry. Honestly.
Oh my God, that was really funny.
No, that's not even fair. He doesn't suck. But Joe Mixon sucks a lot less.
Yeah.
It just, I don't know.
When you have a superstar running back and you use Perine for the first time in that situation, that's when calls into question your play calling ability.
Like, it's like, at least it gets like, it's not excusable if Perine had, 7 carries up to that point. But at least if he has 7 carries, he's not practically cold at that point. By the 4th quarter, you've had 1 carry. You're practically a dead body when it comes to running the football. Like, you see it all the time with running backs getting better as the game goes on because, the defense gets tired or whatever. You just get a better feel for it. Like, the dude had 1 carry. That pissed me off, but that's not even the worst part of the entire end of the game. And I'm just going to jump into this and feel free to stop me or interrupt me or whatever. But the refs, I thought for the first time in a long time watching a game of football, I loved the way it was reffed, the way it was called for 3.5 quarters. Yeah, they missed the 1 big offensive pass interference on T. Higgins against Jalen Ramsey, like in the 2nd quarter, whenever that was, on the 75-yard touchdown. That sucks. I wish they hadn't missed that. The irony is there for the Rams. I get it. The internet had fun with it. The refs should have called that one. But at the same time, I enjoyed that they were consistent for the whole game in that they were just letting them play because they weren't calling pass interference. There are some games where it seems like any amount of hand fighting is a pass interference call. And you have refs that are practically taking over the game and calling, 15 penalties in a game. And it gets tiring to watch, and it gets annoying because it's like, okay, does it really even come down to the players then? Or does it come down to, who gets more missed calls versus who gets less missed calls? And that's annoying. They're going to miss calls. It's going to happen. They're human. There's not a perfect way to do it without a very quick type of replay system that can decide things on the spot. But until the NFL does that, the way that it's currently running and established, there's not a perfect way to do it. But I enjoyed the fact that they were consistent and just letting the players play and make plays. There are plenty of times I'm sure that Jalen Ramsey probably got away with a little bit more than he should have. And I'm sure it went the same way in the opposite. But then you call 6 total penalties in the entire game. On the final drive was 3 or 4 of them, depending on how they count the offsetting penalties that happened at the end. I'm not entirely clear on that. But there were 3 or 4 just on that final drive, including one of the worst calls that I had ever seen, which I don't even remember if it was defensive pass interference or if it was defensive holding, because I forget if the ball had already come out. But it was on like either 3rd or 4th down and goal, and it gave the Rams a fresh set of downs and the ability to get the game-winning touchdown. Like, do they get it on the next play if that wasn't called? Maybe. I believe it was 3rd down because they would have had one more chance at it.
Yeah.
Do they get it on the next play? Very possibly. Very realistically, they could have scored a touchdown on the next play. But now we're sitting here talking about it because of a garbage call. After you go the entire game without calling things like that,
it was only 4 called the entire, 4 penalties called the entire game up until that point.
3.
Oh, sorry, 3.
3 or 2, depending on how they call the offsetting penalties. But that's what I mean. I don't ask for refs to be perfect. I just want them to be consistent. And that was like, I'm not a big, refs, decided this game or whatever. Like, I don't think that the refs are the ones that caused the Rams to win. I think that the calls that happened at the end of the game tilted in the Rams' favor. The Rams very well could have won without those calls, but we don't know. And now we're forced to look at the fact that the refs helped decide this game. Not to mention that Aaron Donald was offsides on the 4th and 1 call at the end of the game, and nobody called it for some reason. And Aaron Donald was, in fact, the person that got to Joe Burrow first. He caused a lot of pressure and is the big reason that Joe Burrow got sacked or almost sacked on that final play of the game. But again, I just want them to be consistent. And instead, now I have to spend time talking about the fact that they weren't. And it made the end of the game that much less enjoyable. Because it's not like we can just say, wow, Cooper Kupp made this incredible play on 4th down. It's, should they have even been there? Should they have had whatever 3rd and 1 on the 3rd and goal on the 1 yard line? Should they have even had that? I don't know. Because the refs took that possibility away from us to know whether or not they legitimately should have been there.
Yeah, that's the thing. Either call them all or don't call any of them. That's the thing. That's when it comes down to. And it just always sucks when games like this are clouded by events like that. It's frustrating.
It is. Because again, I don't like talking about refs because it always comes off poorly, especially as a Philadelphia fan. Like, we're the worst. But I just want them to be consistent. Like, they missed calls all throughout that game, but that's fine because they were missing them on both sides. And I don't think it was missing so much as like, we're just going to let them play. I can only say that so many times, but like, it just bothers me. It makes the game less enjoyable when it comes down to that thing at the end. Like, it makes it significantly less enjoyable. And all my favorite games and Super Bowls have been the ones that aren't decided by refs, quote unquote. I don't like the term decided by refs a lot of the time, but that's how it ends up feeling. Yeah.
I also wanted to point out, we talked about the topic we talked about right before this is that I forgot to mention is that I'm not saying he is lying. I'm not saying it's what happened, but Zach Taylor said that 3rd down call with Pirine that he got the play call in late so that he decided to just leave Pirine in. And that's why he got stopped for no game. He said that he thought the Bengals could steal a 1st down with a running play What he didn't explain is why a starting running back Mixon was carrying the ball. But he said, yeah, we were in 2-minute mode, and Samaje has done a great job. His role has been really protecting back and a lot of things that come with that off that. It's just one of those situations where I called the play a little later on the clock, and so I was the one that said leave him in there.
I mean, I believe that it was Zach Taylor's fault.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember having this conversation with you when we were talking about coaches on the hot seat back like halfway through the season. And Zach Taylor was one that I brought up that was kind of, I think it surprised you a little bit. I think we disagreed a little bit where I thought he was on a hotter seat than you did necessarily. And like, clearly he's not on that hot seat anymore, but I stand by the fact that I don't know if he's a good coach. I don't really think that he deserves that contract. And I think that in 2 years, there's a really good chance that they end up regretting it. Like, it feels to me kind of like a Jared Goff extension, where it's like, yeah, he got us to the Super Bowl, and he's been good, but are you winning because of him or in spite of him? And then you end up regretting it. That's what the Zach Taylor experience reminds me of. Like, I think he was gifted a Joe Burrow and a Jamar Chase and a T. Higgins and a Joe Mixon. And they, again, he's not horrible. I don't think he's the worst coach in the league, but I don't know if he's really going to win them any games. Like, I've yet to see him out coach another coach. Like, I know I talk about it all the time, the Eagles in the Super Bowl. When they beat Bill Belichick, Doug Peterson was like, at that point in that season, it was the equivalent of like a pitcher that's, pitching a no-hitter up in like the 8th inning. Like, you don't take him out of the game because he's just on fire.
Yeah.
That was Doug Peterson. He outcoached the crap out of one of the greatest head coaches of all time. Did that remain consistent in the following years? No, not necessarily. But I don't even think Zach Taylor has reached that yet. I don't believe that he has the ability to do that, to outcoach opponents. So I don't know. But I don't necessarily think Sean McVay is any better, though. I don't want to let him off the hook. I still think that he's not a very good coach.
Yeah, we've talked about Sean McVay like every other episode, if you've watched all of our episodes. But I do want to talk a little bit.
Anything positive?
What?
Have I ever said anything positive?
No.
Great.
Not that I know of.
It's the way
I did want to talk a little bit about that
he has nice
final
hair.
play. He does have, his hair looks like it's like spiky. Like, it could hurt you. Like, there probably is a lot of product in there.
Interesting.
Anyway, the final play of the game from the Bengals, where Joe Burrow Aaron Donald kind of gets Joe Burrow. He tries to throw it away. Since we're on the topic of Pirine, was able to get it to Pirine, who was the only one who had even a little bit of separation from a defender, and Pirine didn't dive for the ball. Depending on the camera angle, one camera angle makes it look like if he dove, he would be able to get it. One shows he probably would not have been able to get it anyway. But if you look at that play call from a play perspective, if Joe Burrow has time, that Chase probably has a touchdown because Chase was able to create a lot of separation. So it looks like Boyd might have been able to get a holding call out of that. And then a lot of the analysts are saying that Burrow looks like he wanted to go to Higgins, but Uzama's defender moved off of him and on to Higgins. But then it creates Uzama being open. But again, Joe Burrow has no time to look on the other side of the field and throw it to him.
Yeah, he didn't have time to run the play that was called.
Exactly. And it was a play, and like that was a good play call. If you look at it from an X's and O's perspective, I think that was a great play call. But unfortunately, your good play calling can't account for the fact that you have an offensive line that looks like Swiss cheese, that there are holes in and gaps in. And I understand that you're playing against Aaron Donald and Von Miller, but it needs to be able to hold up better than that. He almost the entire game, he had no time. It was insane.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It sucked. I did make money because I bet on both Von Miller and Aaron Donald both having a sack. I actually made a lot of money during the Super Bowl. I hit on a lot of my bets. I was pretty happy about that.
Good. I do want to say that while we're doing this, that we're betting that Cooper Kupp was the Super Bowl MVP. You knew what I was going to say. And I told you that I thought it was going to be Cooper Kupp, and you gaslit me into thinking that a receiver could have won MVP.
I did not gaslight you. That is such a negative connotation, and it's going to make me sound like a jerk. I didn't gaslight you.
A little bit.
I still agree with everything I said, and I think you don't even necessarily disagree with my arguments.
I don't disagree with your arguments, but you talked me out of it.
And I stand by it. And also, that was mainly to the point of betting. I don't think that Cooper Kupp was a good bet. I thought that Aaron Donald was a good bet. I thought that less
Could've made
things
more
had to
money,
go right
yes.
for Aaron Donald to be MVP and get a better payout than more things having to go right for Cooper Kupp to be MVP and get a lesser payout than Aaron Donald, which, by the way, everything that needed to happen for Cooper Kupp to be MVP basically happened because it was Matthew Stafford having a not good game.
Yeah.
You can't give it to Stafford when he throws 2 interceptions. You can't. Kupp had 2 touchdowns. Without that final drive, Kupp's not the MVP, obviously, because they don't win, but also his stats were meh up until then. He had a touchdown, but not a bunch of yards. And the defense as a whole had 7 sacks, and Aaron Donald only had 2 of them. So it wasn't like Aaron Donald was more impactful than anyone on that defense by far, but it wasn't showing up in the stats.
Yeah.
And for a defensive player to win, it needs to be a stat sheet stuffer. That is a hard sentence.
That was a very interesting
but I stand by everything I said. I didn't gaslight you. I'm just, I'm right. So
anyway,
as far as I'm aware, Aaron Donald won MVP.
I was right, and my heart was very happy for Cooper Kupp. That was very exciting for him. I'm thrilled about him. I think he was plus 600 odds, I think is what it was.
Yes, and I am also excited for Cooper Kupp, although he needs to fix his beard.
He does.
I respect to him for being able to grow out that much hair, but I'll never agree with the way that guys let their hair just grow outwards. It's almost like he's forming a water basin.
Yeah. You can
why?
probably eat cereal out of it.
Yeah, just for breakfast with
convenient.
Stafford. Sure. I think it looks horrible. Because then, I don't know. This is a different conversation that we can have at a different time.
Yeah, exactly.
It very much bothers me. Just comb it down. Just comb it down, Yeah. Or just cut it a little shorter. If your beard isn't...
Or just style it and use some products.
Speaking of beards, James Harden. All right, I got my one reference in. We're good. Moving on.
I know we're going a little bit low on time here, so I want to go through just a couple of interesting stats. If you have anything to add, please do. So McVay was the youngest head coach to ever win.
I hate him.
I know. That's why I paused for you to say that.
It's the worst.
So one interesting stat I saw, I know. One interesting stat I saw is that the Rams lost nearly 0.2 expected points added per designed run in that game, which is the worst since PFF started in 2006. So every run, designed run they lowered their earned points.
Thank God Sean McVay kept running the ball. What an offensive guru that man is.
Seriously. The Bengals only had 3 drives more than 26 yards, which was pretty interesting.
Sounds about right.
And you just talked about Von Miller. The Rams tied the Super Bowl record of 7 sacks in a game, and Von Miller tied Charles Haley for most career sacks in Super Bowls.
And by the way, Charles Haley has 5 Super Bowl rings. I don't know if he played in more Super Bowls than that, but he does. He has played in at least 5. Von Miller has played in 3, I believe. So
I think so.
Because it would have been 2 with the Broncos.
Yeah. And then another interesting stat was that Stafford gained a majority of his production on intermediate passes, which are the 10 to 19 air yards range. And in that game, he was in the intermediate yards. He was 8 for 12 with 154 yards and 2 touchdowns, which is plus 6.7 CPOE.
Can you define CPOE?
I forget the exact, what is it? I don't want to get all the
completed
words
passes over expectation.
Over expectation. That's what I always like. The expectation is the part that always gets me.
Also, that wasn't me trying to make fun of you for not knowing. I didn't know.
Yeah, I think it's expectation. I always mess up that one and another one, and then I always flip-flop them, and it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I mean, Stafford had a fine game. Losing OBJ hurt him, and I think that was abundantly clear. And also, I think and by the way, I think this plays into it. If OBJ plays the rest of the game, I don't think Cooper Kupp is the MVP.
Could be.
Because one, I think it's less likely that Stafford throws 2 interceptions.
Mhm.
And also I think the ball gets spread out a little bit more. But other than Cooper Kupp and OBJ for that matter, I want to say their third leading receiver was Bryson Hopkins. And unfortunately, that is 100% accurate.
Wow.
Raise your hand if you knew who Bryson Hopkins was before this weekend. I did.
No.
I did not expect him to be the third leading receiver in the game. And Darrell Henderson was fourth at 43 yards. I didn't realize he had 43 receiving yards. But yeah, I don't know. Sean McVay looked lost.
Yeah. One of the other things I wanted to just quickly go over, because we talked about it in our pre-Super Bowl show, was that Jalen Ramsey-Jamar Chase matchup. That Jalen Ramsey just kept getting cooked a little bit. Like Jamar Chase kept being able to create a lot of separation, which I know Chase is good at, but it was like ever so clear in this game that he was very good at getting the separation.
He did create more separation than I think a lot of people do against Ramsey, but I think he also just excelled in contested catches. Like a lot of
that one catch, do you know what I'm talking about?
It was ridiculous.
Insane.
One of the better catches I've Well, I'm back. Ashley's gone. That's fine. Yeah, speaking of Super Bowl catches, I mean, that was one of the better ones that I've seen. Hi, Ashley, you're back.
Hi.
Up there with Julio Jones, Julian Edelman, and basically all the receiving touchdowns from the Eagles won because they were all great, including Corey Clement. Shout out Class Pro, New Jersey. It's beside the point. Yeah, Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow just have an incredible connection, a lot of trust, and Joe Burrow was able to kind of just throw the ball in a place where he knew that Jamar could get it, and Jamar was just able to outdo Ramsey in those situations.
Yeah. And then I know we have 2 final questions for the last about 9 or 10 minutes for this show. And the first one was the conversation that's been floating around because they can't just let him enjoy it for a day. But does this Super Bowl win make Matt Stafford a Hall of Famer?
I mean, I think it makes him easier to put it in. I think there's going to be less conversation about it once he gets there, like once he retires. But I think like people forget how productive he was from a stats standpoint. Yep. Like by the time he retires, he's going to have he's going to be top 5 in passing yardage. If not top 3, maybe top 2 or 1. Like his stats are going to look better than a lot of guys without that Super Bowl ring, if he can just have the length of career that a lot of those guys had, which he already kind of is getting there. But like you compare him to like Phillip Rivers, who is obviously a big topic of conversation without a Super Bowl ring. Like I think his resume is going to look better from a stat standpoint and with the Super Bowl. So I don't know. I mean, I think he is. Whether or not he deserves to be is, I don't know. I think more realistically, like the Hall of Fame has turned into the Hall of very, very good a lot of times, especially when it comes to quarterbacks. I mean, he's never made an All-Pro team. I don't think he's made many Pro Bowls, if that even matters. He's never really been an MVP consideration for an entire season. Those are the kind of things that I think should matter when you're looking at the Hall of Fame, but realistically, I don't think they will.
And Richard Sherman was talking a lot about that on Twitter. I mean, he had some interesting opinions on it. And I don't know, I think I need to see a little bit more. Like, I know he, like, from a stats perspective was good in Detroit, but I don't know. I don't think I'm there yet to call him a Hall of Famer.
I just want to look up all-time passing yardage leaders. So I'm going to do that real quickly while vamping. But he is currently 12th at just under 50,000 yards. So, you know, if he plays 2 or 3 more years, he's probably going to pass Big Ben, Phillip Rivers, Dan Marino, and put himself right outside of that top 5, if not in it. If he plays 4 or 5 more years, he'll be there. All of which I think are realistic, especially if he stays in LA. So I don't know. I think he'll probably end up being there. Just, you know, based on stats alone.
Possible.
So
Yeah, and then our final question, the one I texted you, well, I was out to eat, that just popped in my brain. What implications moving forward in the NFL do you think that this Rams team and how they got to this success and how they got to the Super Bowl and the win, do you think there will be, and if so, what they are, implications for the future of how NFL teams build their rosters?
As a whole, I don't think so. With one specific exception, which I'll get to, but I think for the most part, like, I think that teams are going to still prioritize the draft and building young talent because from a money perspective and from a winning winning in a longer term, I think that's what they're going to prioritize over a longer period of time. And I think it's not like that isn't working, like it isn't basketball where if you have 2 stars, you're automatically in championship consideration. A lot of times it takes a lot more than that.
And sometimes it doesn't even take a star.
Yeah, exactly. Like in my opinion, it starts with a good offensive line and a good defensive line. If you have if you have one of the best offensive lines, one of the best defensive lines, and a good enough quarterback, then you're probably competing for Super Bowls a lot of the times. And that doesn't necessarily take stars. But that being said, I think the one way that it is really going to is from the quarterback position. And this marks the second year in a row that a quarterback on a brand new team, in their first year with a brand new team, won a Super Bowl. Tom Brady with the Bucs last year, obviously, and Matthew Stafford this year. In the past couple of years, I feel like we've seen, bigger name quarterbacks leaving their teams, going to new teams more than we ever have, in a way that's very similar to the NBA, where you see star players leaving their teams kind of at their own whim in a way that we never really have. I think that the quarterback position is the star player caliber of the NFL when comparing it to the NBA. I don't think that any other position can really control their fate like quarterbacks, because they're the only player on the field that touches the ball on every snap.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be the major takeaway of these last 2 years, is doing whatever. Like, I think it's more teams coming around to the idea of doing whatever you need to do to get that quarterback, and then figuring it out, whatever that may cost. Which I think for a long time was not the way that teams approached it.
I completely agree. I do think it may have a little bit more implications for the NFL. I think you might see people, I think especially for quarterbacks, but I think more so with offensive linemen and really good pass rushers, to maybe acquire these guys and not draft them. I think those are two of the positions that you will see people forfeiting draft picks for, more than we ever had. And it's not like the Rams are the first team to do this. I mean, Tampa did it just last year and kept the entire superstar roster for this year. But it's what's the word I'm looking for? It's not great for long-term success. It's not a viable option for long-term success.
Well, I don't think we know that yet.
I don't know, but at some point the bill comes due, right? Like, you have to pay the bill. But I don't know. I think my personal opinion, I don't know. I do think that it's not a viable long-term solution for an organization. That's just my opinion. It could very well possibly be. We're in this new era of football and free agency, and players taking they're going at their will, not just because they're forced out or pushed out or aging out, but that players have a lot of options now. And it's great for them. I'm so happy for them because the players deserve that. But I do think that I personally don't think it's a long-term solution.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I tend to agree.
Yeah. But any other things you wanted to talk about real quick?
Yeah, we normally go a couple minutes over, so I think we should talk about this. But the odds for the 2023 Super Bowl came out. And so the odds that we have in front of us are via Caesar Sportsbook as of Sunday, I believe, after the Super Bowl. But the current Super Bowl champions, the Rams, I'm just going to kind of highlight some of the interesting ones on the list. The Rams are third at 10-1 odds. The Chiefs and the Bills lead the way at 13-2 and 7-1 odds, respectively. The Bengals are in fourth at 12-1 odds. And then
that's an interesting one.
Yeah, it is. I was kind of surprised by that, to be honest. I didn't think that the Bengals would be fourth, and I actually kind of think that's a bad bet.
Yeah, I also think Niners is a really interesting one right after the Bengals at 14-1 odds.
Yeah, I was surprised by that one, but the more that I think about it, the less
Yeah.
surprised I feel like I should be, because it's like they made it that far without a good without a great quarterback.
Yeah.
If Trey Lance can be an upgrade on Jimmy G, I'm not saying he will be, but if he could be, then maybe that's actually like lower than they should be. Maybe they'll be an even better team. And if he's just fine, then maybe it won't matter, just like it kind of hasn't with Jimmy G. The one that makes no sense to me whatsoever, kind of the top one that makes no sense to me, is the Cowboys at 16-1. They currently have the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th best odds, right below the Packers, right above the Buccaneers, the Titans, and the Ravens. I don't know why.
Yeah.
I don't get it. They have, like, a lot of these other teams have had some sort of sustained success or playoff success recently that kind of give them a reason. I mean, even the Buccaneers losing Tom Brady are just below the Cowboys. That seems a little bit high, but at the same time, it's like, all right, well, you still have Bruce Arians. Maybe that's the sports books kind of betting on the idea of them getting another quarterback that isn't the guy that they drafted in the 3rd round, whose name is completely escaping me at the moment last year. But very odd that the Cowboys are that high. I don't really understand why they would be. And it looks like you have a highlighted one that you are intrigued by as well.
Yeah, the Chargers at, I believe I just counted that was 11. I think that one's really interesting to me. I could possibly see them being a little bit higher than they are. They're tied right now with the Patriots, Cardinals, and Colts. I wonder if the Carson Wentz news is going to move that Colts line up or down, because I think it could possibly move it up if you don't have Carson Wentz at the helm. But I think that Chargers team deserves a little bit better than 25-1.
Yeah, they're tied for 12th best odds right now.
12th, okay. And then you want to do bottom ones? Those ones are the worst of the worst.
Well, I'll ask you this question. Just by a quick look of it, are there any that you would feel inclined to bet on if you were going to make a bet, and know that we are not financial advisors or something like that?
And
don't blame us if you lose money.
If you need help with gambling and odds, please call the gambling helpline.
Wow, I was going to say Brian. I didn't realize where you were going with that.
Oh, yeah, no. But if you need help
gambling,
with
call Brian.
Betting, you can call Brian. He's very good at it.
If you have an issue with gambling, call the hotline.
There we go. So, I think if I had to ride with one right now that probably will give me a decent enough payout with not too much risk, I really like the Ravens at 20-1 odds. I think that's another fairly young team.
Giving me bad vibes, man.
It could be very bad vibes, but we had no bad vibes going into last season, and everybody like died. So I don't know. That one is one I would probably put a little bit of money on. And then let's see. That Chargers 25-1, I think, is a really interesting one. I think that one probably gives me a little bit of intrigue.
Yeah.
What about you?
So for me, big ones are, one, the NFC. I think I'm more interested in betting in, because you look at the AFC and it's the Chiefs and the Bills, and whoever you bet on is going to have to go through them. I don't see that team in the NFC. I don't think the Rams are that team. I think this was one of the, 2 weaker teams that we've had in the Super Bowl in a while. And I think that's, part of the reason. Like, I don't think there was a truly dominant team this season as a whole, but also like going into next year, the amount of question marks in the NFC make it much more interesting to me in terms of like the possibility of someone coming out of nowhere. Like, the top team in the NFC this year was the Packers. Is Aaron Rodgers there? Is Devontae Adams there? I have no clue. I mean, yeah, if they're there, they're probably the top team. Outside of them, I don't really know who I'm that excited
I do love the
about.
Bills, but I probably wouldn't put money on them right now.
And they're also the AFC.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the one I'm most interested in, and hear me out.
Oh, God.
Is the Philadelphia Eagles.
The Eagles, yep.
But it has nothing to do with me being an Eagles fan.
That's what they all say.
Already bet on them. I didn't even care what their odds were. But the reason is because they're currently tied at 40-1 odds with the Seahawks, the Browns, and the Dolphins. They're behind the Saints and the Vikings, which I think is ridiculous. And they're barely above the Raiders, Falcons, Commanders, and Steelers. The last 2 Super Bowl winners have been teams with a brand new quarterback, the Eagles just went to this playoffs with a very flawed quarterback in Jalen Hurts, and they are apparently the favorite to land Russell Wilson. If Russell Wilson lands in Philadelphia, where do you think those odds jump up to? Knowing how flawed the NFC is as a whole.
Wicked high.
Is there really any reason to say that they couldn't be the 1 or the 2 seed in the NFC? Because
I didn't know that that's the favorite landing spot for Wilson.
It's the one that's being most predicted now by like Ian Rappaport, a couple other guys. That's the only reason I like their odds.
I think they might move up into like Buccaneers territory.
I think that they probably even maybe move above the Cowboys if they land a Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
Which automatically just means you got a massive deal. That's kind of what I'm looking at, the same way that I looked at the MVP odds, where it's like, okay, Aaron Donald, I think less things need to go right for him to, outproduce and give me money or whatever. I think if one thing changes with the Eagles in that, I think you see them being a much heavier favorite than they are currently, and you'll have wished that you betted on them. And I don't think there's that many teams around them that I feel that way about. I mean, like, maybe the Bears are interesting. I don't really like the Bears, but a new head coach, a quarterback that I think is talented going into the second year. They kind of remind me of the Bengals a little bit in that way, sort of, but also just a lot of teams that we've seen kind of surprisingly have success. And I think the Dolphins are interesting too, because I like the head coaching hire. I think Jalen Waddle and Tua are very talented, and I think that they could take a huge step forward this year.
And then our bottom 5 worst odds are Jets and Texans at 200 to 1, Lions at 150 to 1, Jags at 125 to 1, Giants at 100 to 1, and Bears and Panthers at 80 to 1 odds. Those are our bottom 5 odds.
You just okay. You gave us 7 teams.
Yeah, I meant like I said odds, not teams.
Yeah.
I said our 5 worst odds.
Yeah. The Jets, Texans, Lions, and Jaguars all definitely belong down there. I think the Giants probably do too, although I feel better about I hope their odds went up after they fired Joe Judge and hired Brian Daboll. But I just don't know if they necessarily have the roster to do anything.
I think only time will tell, because I think there's going to be a lot of turnover, but that's a conversation for a different day. Really, really quickly, 2 minutes. Every time an elimination game happens in playoffs, we have talked about the future for the team that was eliminated. It's the Super Bowl, so one team won, one team lost. I think the more interesting of the two is the Rams, because the Bengals are a very young team. They're not really losing any of their superstars to free agency. There are a lot of rookie contracts still alive. They just renewed Zach Taylor. I think that they are the less interesting, but why don't you tell us that's really run down on the Bengals, but really quickly tell us about what you think of the future for the Rams.
I think it's kind of just going to be a return to what they have right now. There's rumors that Aaron Donald and Sean McVay could retire.
Well, they both said at the parade today, run it back.
And yeah, that's what I was saying.
Why would McVay retire?
Spend more time with his family or something, to go into talking on TV.
Oh, Lord.
Maybe because he doesn't want people to find out he's a fraud. I don't know. I can't read the man's mind. One last shot on Sean McVay right there.
Good.
But I don't think they're going to have a lot of maneuverability to be able to make large scale changes.
Yeah.
So I think you're going to see largely the same team return next year, and possibly just a worse version of it. If Odell Beckham Jr. returns, which is a massive
tore his ACL in the game. We haven't mentioned that.
Oh yeah, we didn't mention OBJ tore his ACL in the Super Bowl. Who knows when he'll be back? Who knows how healthy he'll be? I believe he's about to turn 30 years old. We don't know what his recovery is going to look like. Robert Woods obviously should be back, and he's recovering from a torn ACL, but got it much earlier in the season. We don't know about Von Miller, and I don't know off the top of my head what other major free agents they may or may not have. Obviously, I'm assuming Andrew Whitworth, the left tackle that is 40 years old, will retire.
I want you to show that picture I sent you. Speaking of Andrew Whitworth.
Did you just send me another picture?
No, I sent it to you a couple days ago, but I just resent it to you because I wanted to show everyone that picture.
Okay.
Since we're talking about Whitworth and the Rams.
Okay. Hold on.
You should have it now.
Yeah.
Yay.
But Yeah, I mean,
I think Whitworth might retire. I think he's probably going to retire.
Well, I was going to say that. Yeah, that's what I was in the middle of saying.
Old.
He's going to retire. He's 40 years old.
40 years old.
I mean, if you have the opportunity at 40 years old to go out a Super Bowl champion, like, I don't know why you wouldn't do that. So yes, that is a picture of three men. And I guess it makes Ashley happy.
He looks like a big teddy bear. He was also the Walter Payton Man of the Year award.
Yes, he is. This is Andrew Whitworth right here.
Yay, Andrew.
A very grainy version of it, but
good. But yeah. That's the Super Bowl. That's the. Oh, did you have something else you wanted to add about the future? Go.
No, just that I don't think a lot's going to change. I don't think they're going to have the possibility to change a lot.
Yeah, I think they might lose a couple to free agency, but that's about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the 2022 Super Bowl where the Rams defeated the Bengals in a score of 23-20. The Bengals covered. But before we do our usual send-off, I just want to say a huge thank you to everybody. If you've listened to every week of this podcast, if you've listened to one episode or just 10 minutes of it, we really appreciate it. This has been an amazing season, and doing this has, reinvigorated me and my love for football. And I am very grateful for every last one of you that have made this season so amazing. Duncan found background music, royalty-free background music. So while I'm doing a very nice speech about how much I thank you guys, he's going to play this song. But I do appreciate it. Can you turn that off?
No, it's awesome.
It's not. I hate it.
Why do you hate it?
Oh, this is the space one, not the feeding ducks.
No, I didn't like the feeding the ducks. I like Into Space.
But can you turn it off for a second? So, just again, thank you. I appreciate it.
You could have just spoken. It's called background music for a reason. You could have just spoken over it.
It was so loud.
It really wasn't that loud.
Is there anything you want to add?
No.
No. Okay.
I think
tell them where they can find you.
You can find me here in my house. You can find me not crying about the Sixers anymore because we finally traded away Ben Simmons and we got James Harden. Got a second one in there today. Got to be happy. You can find me rooting for the Sixers. You can find me at the Sixers championship parade at the end of the season. And you can find me on Twitter at mpduncan75.
And he also is the producer for Dino Game Theory, Jacksfalcon.
Yes. I produce the Undrafted podcast hosted by @Dino Game Theory, Mr. Jax Falcone. I'll actually be the guest this week. I'm recording that.
Oh, are you?
This, yeah.
I love that. I love when you guys are on together. But you can find me on Twitter at Ashley_Marie with 2 A's in Ashley. You can find all my content with the Undroppables on their Twitter and on their website. And you can find both of us in the Undroppables premium Discord channel, which you can get access to while subscribing to our Patreon. A few dollars a month gets you unlimited access to all of our Undroppables team members, where you can ask questions about trades, dynasty, redraft, any questions about rookies. Please come join us. You can see that on the patreon.com/theundroppables. Thank you guys for an amazing season. We are not going to stop doing this during the off season. We may be a little bit more infrequent, but I'm so glad to have you guys, and I'm so glad, and have a great off season.
Bye, everyone. Go Sixers.